Here we go again from SoFi, immediately following yet another U.S. men's national team loss. This one to Canada in the third place game of the Nations League. I didn't think we were going to do this again, but we are going to do it again. Good friend David Mosse here, a good friend Stu Holden. All right, instant reaction after that 2-1 loss to Canada.
Very disappointing. To play the way they did the other day and lose to Panama, and then Pochettino rips the players. You're expecting a response. You're facing a rival, which I think we can call Canada that at this point, and they came out flat again. It wasn't until that you fell behind, Oluwaseyi scored, that the U.S. perked up for a few minutes, a nice equalizer, Weah to Luna to Ajiman, but then finished the half poorly and played a lousy second half, deservedly lost. Listen, I know what matters is the World Cup. Even in the 25 pecking order, the Gold Cup, if you bring your strongest squad, is probably above this. But this was the first competition under Pochettino. You're trying to generate momentum. You're trying to create some enthusiasm among the fans. Very disappointing last few days for the U.S.
This is rock bottom for the U.S. right now, and this window went about as badly as it possibly could have for Mauricio Pochettino and this team. And as we continue to sit here and sober up off the back of the 22 World Cup, when there was so much hype and expectation for this group. Now, we can look back and analyze that performance and say that it was admirable, the way they got out of the group, the way they beat Iran, and Pulisic had his moment. But since that point, it has been all downhill for this team, for these group of players. And I think the sobering reality is, and the fact is that these players are just not as good as we'd hope they could become. Now, they play at good clubs, and we fall in love with that fact, but when they step on this field for the U.S. men's national team, I'm tired of talking about fights and hearts and belief and things that we want to see and that are just a baseline expectation. But when it comes down to it, you played against a Panamanian team that ended up finding a way to win, didn't play you off the field, but they won the game, and they played with heart and identity. Canada had a better team out there tonight. They were the better team on the field. They felt like they were the team that was going to win. And so, yeah, the sobering reality for the U.S. is that right now we might be the third best team in this region, which is, by the way, where we finished when we qualified for Qatar. So it hasn't gotten any better. I don't feel any more optimistic. In fact, I feel worse than I did the other night. My hope was that we would see a bounce-back performance of some sort in this game, and it was flat. Pochettino made a bunch of changes. The one bright spot I thought was Diego Luna, and outside of that, not too much.
Look, I'm trying to stop myself from being numb and apathetic to this team. But again, what we saw here tonight was yet another uninspired performance, but also a boring performance. And I cannot tell you the amount of people that after the first loss in this Nations League to Panama came up to me and said, do they care? Talking about the players. Does this team even care? And many people saying, I don't think they care. And what we saw here tonight against Canada did absolutely nothing to dispel that. That is a problem. That is a problem for the players. That is a problem for Mauricio Pochettino. That is a problem for this national team. On the other side, you got to give credit. You got to give credit to Jesse Marsch, head coach of Canada, and the way that he set them up and ultimately getting the result. Yes, he got kicked out of the game, but we've seen plenty of sports where in order to rile up your troops, you do big, bold things. And I know sometimes you can roll your eyes at Jesse, but to the winner go the spoils. So congratulations to Jesse Marsch and to this Canadian team. I know it's only a third-place game, but this, to your point, I think is rock bottom. You can only go up. And this puts even more pressure and onus, and I guess even opportunity if you look at it, this summer when it comes to the Gold Cup for this team. Winning the Gold Cup has been done many, many times. So winning the Gold Cup is nothing necessarily to celebrate, except on the heels of this complete disaster and failure at Nations League, it is an absolute must relative to 2026. Anything else before we go, guys?
No, I have some issues with Pochettino, but we'll talk about that after Mexico-Panama when we do our full post-game pod.
That's a great tease. I'm chomping at the bit to go more, but I'm going to save it for the next section.
Yes, we will be live on all the platforms out there immediately following the Mexico-Panama match, so tune back into the State of the Union. welcome back. Sometimes, you get a different perspective when the scenery changes. So let's see if we have a different perspective. A few hours after the U.S. Loss, and in the confetti of the celebration that is going on behind us for Mexico being Nations League champions. I want to read something before I ask you, Mosse, about how you feel here. This is from Landon Donovan. I'm so sick of hearing how, quote, talented this group of players is and all the amazing clubs they play for. If you aren't going to show up and actually give you-know-what about playing for your national team, decline the invite. Talent is great, but pride is better. As I said in the opening segment and immediately after the game, I am hearing a lot from ex-players, from fans, from just random people that are texting me that don't watch a whole lot of soccer, but tuned in tonight or have gotten the news about the concern relative to 2026, but more importantly, from a personality perspective and a character perspective, whether these players, as I mentioned in the first segment, actually care. It's been a couple of hours, Mosse, on the field and in general, maybe get into a little detail on what you saw and what's the problem.
It's such an interesting part of the discourse right now because for years we all encourage U.S. players to go to Europe to try to play for the biggest clubs. And now there's this narrative that by going there, they feel disconnected from the national team. They don't care as much. So that's going to be an interesting thing for Pochettino to manage in the lead up to 26.
See, I think in these situations, the easiest thing to do is to question how much people actually care about something, and do these players actually care about? I believe they care about playing for the national team. The difference is I just don't think they're as good as they thought they were. And what happened in the previous cycle leading into the 2022 World Cup was we went with this predominantly young team because of what happened with us not qualifying for 2018. And all of these players, relative to what our expectations were at that time, they overachieved, they end up at big clubs, and then all of a sudden they come out of that, and I just got the feeling that they think, wow, we play at Juventus and we play at AC Milan, and you forget that you still have to get out there on the field and turn up and play the way that we know that they can, and I just think that part is lost. I think these guys care. I do. I think they care about the U.S. I think they have passion for representing this country because I saw it. I've seen it from this team in the past. I just think that our expectation of what that looks like is different, and that's that expectation of what it takes to win games versus actually just putting on the crest and stepping on the field.
If there is one or multiple players out there that actually don't care, I mean, that would break.
But do you think there are? Genuinely, you don't think these guys care?
I think it's relative. So the care that previous generations maybe feel, or even this generation feel, I do think that it may have changed for some. Not all. But here's the thing. It's almost where you can't blame the players. We are the architects of our own demise to a certain extent because for years and for generations, we talked about wanting this. Like you said, Mosse, we want players to play at the highest level. We want American players to have as many opportunities. We want American players to make a lot of money, to be famous, to be playing at some of the best teams in the world. And that has certainly started to happen. And when you look at the talent that we have, and when you look at the pedigree that we have out there on the field, if in our effort to do that, which we did accomplish, we threw a little of the baby out with the bathwater, and it led to either one, some, or all being devoid or just lesser than when it comes to the pride that they feel representing what I feel is the greatest country in the world. Obviously, we did ourselves a disservice, and that is a problem going forward.
Can we get into the starting lineup today?
Absolutely.
Because to be fair, Pochettino did what I advocated, which is he took out Tessman, he played Weston alongside Tyler Adams and inserted an attacking midfielder. Now he opted for Luna instead of Gio, which is interesting. But Luna started on the left, Pulisic in the middle, way on the right. They were interchanging throughout the game, but Pulisic spent a lot of time in the middle. I know you don't like him there.
I do not like Christian Pulisic in a central position. I think that he is world-class playing out wide, so play him out wide. In the same way, I like Weah on the right-hand side. I think he's been the most consistent up and down. The Luna thing is interesting because I think there's a reason why he resonated, and it's a very simple reason. He works hard. He's got a bulldog type of mentality. Now, we have seen that in the past, a guy like Brendan Aronson, for example. So it is something that people gravitate to and grab on, but is it enough at the highest level just to have that dog? Can he complement it with actually being able to run the show?
So the biggest glaring thing to me that stood out, guys, was going back to the Copa America. The number one thing that I was on was that this team lacks leadership. It lacks leaders. And we felt like, well, okay, Tyler Adams is back, right? He's the closest we've had to a captain, that the way that I would think of a captain in a team, and somebody that brings a little bit of that leadership, can go out, can get stuck in, can start a fight. And he almost did it in the beginning of the Canada game. I thought, okay, here we go. But when I was watching, as we do in these moments when we're in tough times for this team, you're psychoanalyzing, overanalyzing every little moment. The goal goes in for Canada, and I just see this. Slumped shoulders, body language is down, nobody looking around saying, come on, guys, let's get going here. There was no intensity, there was no leadership in that sense. And that shows me a couple of things about this team right now is they've lost their identity. And they're trying to find this new identity under Mauricio Pochettino. And by the way, Mauricio Pochettino is trying to find his identity as the coach of the U.S. men's national team. He's never coached international soccer before. It's a little bit different. He's getting to know this player pool. And I think he's also going to find, now he's a high-level manager, we know that, so I'm not naive to think that he can't figure this out, but the international game is different to the club game, and he's got to figure out pretty quickly here how to get the best out of these players in tournament soccer and international soccer, and that starts yesterday now about the Gold Cup.
Yeah, I mean, the Gold Cup is really interesting because now, unlike the Nations League, this is a tournament situation. Obviously, the last tournament situation and the first tournament situation that Pochettino is going to go through with this team, it's something the U.S. has won numerous times. So winning it wouldn't necessarily be a feat. You get a little pat on the back, but we're not creating statues for anybody. However, to have the team in camp, and there's still going to be some concerns because of the Club World Cup, but to have as much of the team in camp as possible, to have back the likes of Jedi Robinson and maybe even a Dest going forward, he is going to have an opportunity to work with a team in a different type of format. And I hope that we see a different, to your point, type of personality that emerges from this team this summer that they can carry over to 2026. Because again, we keep saying we are getting closer and closer. The ramp is not a ramp anymore, all right? It's a couple of steps until the summer of 2026. And I think it's concerning to me. I know it's concerning to the people that were here and watched this game. I'm sure it's concerning to the people at home that watched this game, that we are not further along, that we are not buoyed, that we are not excited, that we are not mesmerized to a certain extent.
But are we capable of that? Yes! I mean, that's the conversation.
Yes, we are.
Do you think we are?
Because I know what this team is definitely capable of way better than they showed in these two games, for sure. Two players I do want to ask you about are Gio Reyna and Yunus Musa. They both came on as part of a triple sub in the second half. So Gio played 20-something minutes total in the two games. Musa did get to play a little bit in the midfield today, which I liked. But I don't think Pochettino has quite figured out yet what to do with those two guys.
So, look, Gio Reyna is this elusive unicorn to me. And we've seen these moments and flashes of brilliance, but the reality is, and we have to start having this real conversation about him, is what is his level? What's his potential? What's the ceiling? But first and foremost, he's got to get on the field for his club team. He has to get a move in the summer. He has to figure out himself how to go through these tough moments and ride them out and be a realistic contributor. And by the way, he's not good enough from what I've seen that he can roll into camp having played 5 minutes at the end of every single game, and that he should expect to play a more meaningful role for the U.S. men's national team. I just haven't seen it. And sure, he could have come on earlier in the game or come on against Panama, maybe had a little moment of brilliance. But I want to see something that's consistent, that's going to be there all the time, and then is a dependable asset, if that's the type of player that I'm going to build my team around.
Is it fair or acceptable for Mauricio Pochettino to do what he did after the game and kind of push it forward and push all chips in on 2026? For example, he said, if we're going to make mistakes, I'd rather we do it now because we have time. If it happens 1 year, then, quote unquote, Houston, we have a problem. And that's, I think that's fair. He said when he was asked about the negativity that is surrounding this team right now, he said, negativity? Where is the negativity? Pessimism, maybe, yes. But you see in the World Cup, teams that were building were not good until right at the World Cup. I want to send the message to the fans. Don't be pessimistic and get bad feelings. Is he gaslighting us?
Yes, he is. And this is a situation that U.S. Soccer created by going big, going for the big hire, because we all knew nothing really matters for him from a results perspective until 2026. And that's the situation that's been created. Could you imagine if Greg Berhalter had coached these 2 games? He wouldn't have made it out of the stadium. He would have been fired in the locker room. Right. And so this is where we are. And what I would ask back of Pochettino, if I had heard him with that quote, was, so what did you see over the past 2 games that you can build from? Because I didn't see much at all. Luna was a bright spot. Ajimang, I thought, came on and made a difference. He scored a goal. He got an opportunity. But the reality is, I think what he's found out in these 2 games is probably more meaningful to him about himself, about players, about the relationships, and about the feeling coming out of it.
It's funny you say that, because somebody texted me earlier and said that exact same thing. In that, well, first off, there was, again, an apathy to this person's reaction. But then they said, you know what? If Pochettino, to your point, found out things that ultimately are going to make him do his job better and make this team better, either this summer in Gold Cup, but certainly in 2026, then I don't like it. Nobody likes winning, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's always going to get the benefit of the doubt. But we will see when that roster comes out for the Gold Cup. Is it the usual suspects? Or is it a different mix that was relative to this failure?
Yeah.
Mosse.
You mentioned Ajiman. He ended up playing more minutes than Sargent in the 2 games, scored a goal. Sargent didn't. Do you think he's leapfrogged Sargent in the striker pecking order? And is Sargent another player we have to start having a conversation about that it's just never going to happen with the national team?
Yeah, look, I don't even want to begin to try to guess on positioning right now,
power
and who's
rankings?
where, and power rankings. I mean, everything is on the table right now, is what I would say. If I'm Mauricio Pochettino, you know who your core guys are, although I do wonder if there's some performance over the course of these 2 games that he looks at and he thought, you know, when I came in, I thought that guy was going to be more of this, and he's not. And this is what I'm going to be able to get from him. So you start to place them in these different buckets. And unfortunately for Sargent, it wasn't the best situation, right, against a difficult Panamanian team that's sitting back deep. He didn't get many chances. Ajimang comes on and scores. But that position, you've got, Balogun Pepe, Haji Wright, Ajimang, Josh Sargent. There's 6 or 7 guys, but none of them have nosed ahead. Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, you get your chance. You don't do it, next guy up.
And we should note at the other end, Stefan was going to start today, but couldn't because of an illness. So Matt Turner got another chance. But I do think goalkeeper is really unsettled right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've said time and time again that position, I don't think it's unsettled in terms of the names that we're talking about, but I think it's unsettled as to who is going to start. Matt Turner, you know, in the first game did not do well on that on that goal. I think he'd be the first to admit it. It wasn't Matt Turner's fault tonight in what happened, but I think he is going to be under competition. I didn't think the defense was good tonight. And again, you know, we talk about the outside back position with Jedi and possibly Dest at some point if he comes back even close to what he is. The fall off from those 2 on the outside back position is just incredible.
Yeah.
And this was a bad back line in the decisions that they made. They did not make me, and I think anybody probably on the team, secure in what they are doing. And so Poch is going to have to figure that out too.
Yeah, I have no idea what Mark McKenzie was doing on Jonathan David's goal, the second Canada goal. And Joe Scally, you and I were talking during the game, he might be another one of these guys that we put in the Malik Tillmans and Dejas, Johnny Cardoso basket. Very good for his club, but it just doesn't translate for whatever reason with the national team.
And when we were trying to analyze the different positions, when we came into this camp, I think we were saying, okay, there's question marks at goalkeeper. There's question marks at center back. Question marks in the middle of the field. Question mark up front. And here we are after 2 games saying, I don't have any answers at all. And guys got opportunities. McKenzie got an opportunity. Cameron Carter-Vickers got an opportunity in this game with Tim Ream on the bench. And as far as I'm concerned, and I kind of like it this way, if I'm being honest, off the back of those 2 games, is that all of these guys will be going back to their teams with a little bit of a feeling of uncertainty about where they stand in this pool. And I do believe what I said earlier. You learn more from the losses. You never want to lose. But as a coach and as a player, and if I'm a coach that's just newly into a system or a team that would roll into a tournament like this and expect to win, but then loses, I'm looking at reactions, and those are when I'm going to find out if the guys that have a little bit extra and can turn it on. And the last part I'll take away from all of that, and piggybacking off what you said, the depth was already a question. The depth is even thinner than we thought, and that is huge drop-off at multiple positions, fullback, center mid, center back, and I don't know what's going to happen at goalkeeper.
But I want to reiterate what I was talking about last night, and actually if you go to fox.com, foxsports.com over there, I had an article about not letting these guys off the hook. I was talking to some fans here, and kudos to the fans that came out. I know a lot was made about this environment, and let's just put that to bed, by the way. It had nothing to do with the environment. Was it ideal? No. We all understand that. Everybody wants to play in front of a packed house, and everybody wants to play in front of their own fans. And so we can scream and yell about what CONCACAF did relative to the environment. But you have to be able to self-motivate. And they weren't able to do that. But I was talking to some fans out here, and they were hurting. They were angry, but I go back to this word. They were apathetic. And that is not anything that I ever thought I would hear about this team. Look, if you're going to lose, fine. People will be angry when you lose, but at least be interesting when you lose. At least be entertaining when you lose. At least be exciting. And too often I heard, I don't care because they have made me not care. And even in that moment when I do care, they don't reward me with anything that tickles my fancy. They don't reward me with any type of individual or collective type of movement that I can say I can get behind that. And that is a problem going forward.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but after the U.S.-Canada match,
do.
we were hanging out near the team buses, and we saw all the players and coaches for both teams come out. And by the way, Bayern Munich fans, no need to worry. I saw Alphonso Davies. He looked fine, wasn't limping at all. But both coaches, Jesse Marsch and Mauricio Pochettino, went out of their way to talk to you. Anything in those conversations you can share?
Well, they understand that the State of the Union, all right, basically dictates everything out there when it comes to soccer, and so they obviously want to get on our good side. I have known Jesse for a long time, and I congratulated him. As I said in the opening segment, congratulations to Jesse Marsch for what he did. I asked him if he was all right because he lost his head. It was strange for him to lose his head in that moment because if you actually look at the plays, those weren't moments to lose your head, but I think he kind of wanted, we've seen hockey, hockey and baseball managers get
there was some real Bobby Knight energy there. He gets tossed. The Canada fans are chanting, Jesse, Jesse. It was a move to fire up his team.
Yeah, and the Pochettino, interaction that I have, I had met with him with some other folks last week, and I find him interesting. I find him fascinating, but that's all fine and well. Ultimately, he has to win. And I think he recognized that in this moment, here I'm interacting with someone who's going to go and get behind a mic and probably crush me. And, I think that he absolutely deserves the crushing that is happening right now. But, again, he has the opportunity and he has the leeway because he's going to be here through 2026. And he is constantly assessing here. But this is not a good look for someone that they are paying $6 million a year. And, it was about he wants to get better. Well, yeah, we all want to get better. But is it only going to get better come the summer of 2026? Because if he's putting all of his chips into the summer of 2026, that is a big, big bet. And he better not be bluffing. Because if it doesn't work out, that's a problem. Now, listen, if you are horrible in the Nations League, and let's say you suck it up this summer in the Gold Cup, and then you do things we've never seen before in the World Cup, nobody's going to give a crap. Nobody's going to give a crap. But I think more people now are going to look at the Gold Cup, whether they give a crap or not. I think they're going to look at the Gold Cup with an eye to, are they going to rebound? Quick Gold Cup thoughts in terms of what you want to see or what you think you'll see.
What I was going to say there is this is where Mauricio Pochettino is going to earn his money. And I do wonder if you got him one-on-one, no cameras on, and you asked him, what did you expect when you took this job, and what you've seen, is that what you expected, or did you think you had a little bit more? Now, it doesn't matter if he thought he had more or whatever.
Took the gig.
The job is the job, and it's his job to figure out the best way, and he's had such a great experience in his career of doing this as underdogs at different levels with some of the biggest stars in the world, so automatically he commands the respect, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. As bad as those two games were, but I tell you what, you have to make that team believe, you have to make yourself believe, and ultimately you have to make the country believe come 2026 that we can roll into that tournament and we can do things that have never been done before, because that's what we've been promised and that's what we expect. Because I have questions right now, and I don't think that this team can. I said it on our pod the other day. I don't believe that this team is any better than anything we've seen before in the past, but maybe they'll surprise us in 2026. And that little bit of optimism, I think it starts this summer in the Gold Cup, because the reality is, I don't know if you know the number of games, Mosse, but the number of competitive games that he has outside of the Gold Cup, it's zero. It's friendlies, and then you're rolling into the World Cup in 26.
I do like the 2 friendlies they lined up for June with Switzerland and Turkey. Those will be useful, but I'd like to see the U.S. win the Gold Cup, frankly. You need to generate some momentum. You need to establish a winning identity with this group. Mexico won the last edition, beating Panama in the final. Great goal by Santi Jiménez. Today, Mexico beats Panama in the final to win the Nations League. Raúl Jiménez with both goals. So I'd like to see it be the U.S. holding the trophy.
What do you make of Mexico, by the way?
I still don't think they're that good, but a couple things I'll say about them. Raúl Jiménez's return to form is such a... They have a real match winner up top. Right. And then the second thing, and you can speak to this, Javier Aguirre. He's almost the Bruce Arena of Mexican football. Yep. Just this wily veteran coach, doesn't care about style, just wants to win. And I think he might be the right guy right now for Mexico.
He's absolutely the right guy. I know in Mexico it's a little bit of a controversial choice when Aguirre was hired. And the full disclosure is that he was our coach in Mallorca before. And so I got to know him a little bit on a deeper level and understand the way he works and the type of coach he is. And as soon as he was linked with this job, I felt he was, unfortunately for American fans, he was the perfect guy for Mexico, who, by the way, were a team going through an identity crisis, struggling to move on from veteran players and integrate younger players into the team. He comes straight in, brings back some of the experienced players, plays with 2 strikers, old-fashioned, 5-3-2, plays with Jimenez, and they're both playing lights out right now. And the number one thing, yes, the number one thing that I saw from Mexico again in this tournament was passion and pride and intensity and that little know-how that they were missing to win games. Jimenez, to your point, beyond the goals, the guy was running around the field and slide tackling and riling up the crowd and showboating, and that energy fed throughout the team. And so while they might not be a great team, they've got that little je ne sais quoi again that is allowing them to win games. And when they start to pick up confidence, man, I know these Mexican fans and players, they are obnoxious.
And they hired Tata Martino to great fanfare. That was almost like their Pochettino hire. It didn't work out. They went through a couple of other guys, Jimmy Lozano, and now they've settled on, like I said, a veteran Mexican in Javier Aguirre, and he's doing good things.
Before I wrap it up, final thoughts on any of this that we didn't hit?
I feel like you, Mosse and I have talked a bunch. You got anything that's brewing in that brain up there?
No, I think about what soccer was, or what soccer is, and maybe even more so what soccer is to become, especially in the context of 2026. And again, it pains me that at this point we look out there and we are not excited about what is happening. Purely from a U.S. men's national team perspective. I think everybody's excited about what the World Cup is, but certainly when it comes to U.S. fans, you also want your team to not only be there, but be there in a completely different way than back in the 1900s when I was running around. And, you know, the saying is, you've come a long way, baby. Well, to your point, Stu, have we really come a long way? And if we haven't, whose fault is that? And, you know, that's a...
let's not get into youth development. We don't have time.
No. Because I'm not blaming youth development at all. When I look at where we are, with the resources that we have put in, with the opportunities that we have, with the progress that we have undoubtedly made, we should be better. We shouldn't be sitting here in March of 2025 questioning our very existence, questioning if we are even going to get out of the group come the World Cup, the biggest World Cup the world has ever seen, that we are hosting in 400 and whatever days. That is inexcusable, but it is not insurmountable, and it is not unfixable. There are going to be people, and I completely understand why you may check out right now. I completely understand why you may have lost faith in this team. this summer. Like I said, I think Gold Cup is important in terms of the rehabilitation of both this team and Mauricio Pochettino, even though it's early days, and then obviously 2026. But whatever happens in 2026, I do think has a relation to what happens in the summer of 2025. So they better get their you-know-what together.
Yeah, can I ask you both? I'm going to put you guys on the spot.
Okay.
I'll give you a quick second to think about it. I want both of you to tell me, if the World Cup was to start tomorrow, everybody is healthy, who your 11 would be. Because I got to say, when I was standing up in the stands and the national anthems were rolling for Mexico and Panama, and packed house, I had goosebumps. I do now, because I was picturing us in this stadium for the U.S.'s first match in a World Cup and thinking red, white, and blue everywhere, Star-Spangled Banner, and just what a moment that could be for our sport. And then I started to think, who are going to be those 11 guys representing us on that day and rolling out and starting that game? And in an ideal scenario, I know how likely it is these days with injuries and all that, we might not get everybody healthy, but who are the guys that you guys, right now, based on everything you've seen, that you would be starting in that game?
I'd probably still say Turner in goal until I see these other options play. Dest right back, Jedi left back, Richards and Carter Vickers probably in the center of the defense. Adams, McKennie, Musa, Pulisic, Weah, Pepe.
I'm still starting Ream. I do not know who I'm going to start next to him. I just think that it is a huge, glaring hole right now. You had Pepe up top. Yeah, I guess, right now that's... And Sargent, it's just... It didn't work. Doesn't mean it can't work in the future. But again, he didn't grab a hold. Nobody has grabbed a hold. So we'll see if Pepe starts. I like Christian on the left. I like Weah on the right. I like Adams, McKennie. And Musa, if it's a team that's better than us. And I will say I kind of want Reina in there. But if it's just about a fight, Luna interests me. So I know I've given you a bunch of different answers there.
Yeah.
But again, I'm still not confident that this team that I just laid out there in any form, or that he laid out, is going to do things we haven't seen before.
So I know Pochettino's a back four guy, but I'm going to go out there and predict that by the time we roll out in 2026, he's switched to a back three.
Ooh, okay.
I think that the center defense is our weakest position. I know you agree with me on that. And I just think that Tim Ream's going to be another year older. He's still going to be a player you want in your team, because I just don't see two other center backs emerging and being starters that you can depend on in a big game. So I would have Turner. I would have Ream back there. I'm going to say Chris Richards, who doesn't fill me with confidence. That third center back, flip a coin. Cameron Carter-Vickers, maybe.
You chose a back three and you don't have three center backs.
Exactly. That's the point. And then I would play Serginho Dest as a right wing back. You've got Anthony Robinson on the left. I would play with two holding midfielders and Tyler Adams and probably McKennie. It could be a number of different players. He's not a locked-in starter for me, nor is Musa. And then Pulisic, Reina, Pepe.
Wow. All right.
First, that's too many players.
Yes, you want to finish up here?
Can we play with 12?
Hold on.
I do want to give Canada some love. I know Director Gabe is watching. He was texting me throughout the game. He's very excited. Last 6 meetings with the U.S., 3 wins, 2 draws, only 1 defeat, and now 2 wins against the U.S. with Jesse Marsh as the coach. And given everything that's going on in the world right now, that's got to be very satisfying. This has become quite the rivalry, my friend.
Well, I mean, I would like to point out that when Canada cruised through CONCACAF qualifying, then they didn't get out of their group, as opposed to a U.S. team. So again, it comes down to what happens in the World Cup too.
Last comment from me. I absolutely love this venue.
Beautiful.
The only previous time I was here was actually for a Paul McCartney concert. This was my first sporting event here, and it's a shame. I know there's an issue with the field dimensions, but I wish they could have gotten that sorted, because the World Cup final in 26 should be here and not at MetLife Stadium.
Yeah.
Hot take to end the show.
Also, for all the field nerds out there like
great.
me, I'm a grass snob. I can admit that. The field, I was here for the Gold Cup final a year ago. Mexico played Panama. Terrible field. This field and the way they did it is how they will do it in the World Cup, and it was a trial. Overwhelming success. The grass held up perfectly. The ball had a true bounce. Beyond the dimensions, which they're going to blast out some seats and all of that. This is just a reminder for all those people that see all these friendlies played on grass laid on top of turf. When you do it like this, it's perfect. And that's the FIFA standard right there. It's going to be beautiful.
Well, look, this too shall pass. All right, and
I hope.
We've seen
From your lips,
By
my
the way,
friend.
we've seen the numbers, and while you may say you don't care, you do care about the State of the Union, and you are tuning in, and we love you for it. We are going to head into the Los Angeles night. We will be back again midweek next week with some more State of the Union. I want to thank my good friend David Mosse, my good friend Stu Holden, my good friend John Strong, who joined us after the semifinal game. Keep downloading, and reviewing, and rating, and subscribing, and doing all the different things that you do.
I'll hold it for
you hold it? All right.
There you go.
Double fisting, pounding up and down. Subscribe, smash that button, smash it, smash it, smash it. We'll talk to you again next week. All right? Have faith, my friends, and size the day.